Welcome, and very warm greetings to you all. Thank you for joining us again for another Pariyatti Presents event. My name is Briha Sarathi, and I'm here on behalf of Pariyatti as its Executive Director. We're grateful that you've all joined us today. For those of you who are not already familiar with Pariyatti, we're a non-profit charitable organization based in the USA. Our mission is to enrich the world by disseminating the words of the Buddha, providing sustenance for the seeker's journey, and illuminating the meditator's path. Pariyatti imports books from around the world, reprints books, publishes new titles, and converts existing material into digital formats. We protect and provide an enormous catalog of Dhamma resources in many languages and formats that otherwise would not be as easily available. We offer many free services, such as the Pariyatti Learning Center, the Treasures of Pariyatti, Dhamma Storytime, and daily words for inspiration via email, RSS feeds, and our mobile app. We offer most audio and video material, as well as many eBooks and audiobooks free of charge, including a large number of resources for students of SN Goenka. Additionally, we organize donation-based residential Pali workshops and facilitate pilgrimages for Vipassana meditators. For more information about Pariyatti, please visit our website at pariyatti.org. So for today's event, we're joined by Klaus Nothnagel, who is a Pali teacher and a Vipassana teacher in the tradition of SN Goenka. And today Klaus will be interviewed by Marta Van Patten. Marta is a documentary filmmaker and also a Vipassana teacher in the tradition of SN Goenka. So without further ado, I give you Klaus and Marta.
Okay, thanks. Welcome, Klaus. Nice to see you again.
Hello. Good evening. For me, it's I'm sitting here in my studies in the Bavarian Alps. We have a lot of snow, and it's evening, so for me, it's good evening. Good evening to everyone.
Great. Okay, so I understand you've been working on a new talk on the deeper aspects of Sīla. So we're delighted today to invite you to give that talk today. And then afterwards, if any of the audience members have questions, we'll hopefully take some questions at the end for you to answer.
Okay. Yes. So actually, the title of the talk is The Deeper Aspects of Sīla, and we added the ethical lifestyle of non-harm, but positive engagement as provided by the Buddha. Sīla is the Pali expression and the Pali term of what the Buddha suggested and proposed as moral codex to follow. And I wanted to invite, with the expression of deeper aspects, everyone with inner comprehension to embrace what is being offered by the Buddha. Because to me, once a moral and ethical lifestyle is naturally embraced and automatically included in one's daily conduct, well-being, mental calm, and happiness will surely increase. It sounds like a bit of a promise to start with, isn't it? But I would like to go into more detail.
Wonderful.
So the original idea of this presentation started a few years ago when I was invited to go to Israel to give some idea about some aspect of the teaching of the Buddha. And as the teaching of the Buddha is so universal in my eyes, I tried to find something that would connect what I was going to say with the spirit or the faith of the Hebrew. And I did remember when I was brought up here in Bavaria at the I'll do a little excursion at the post-war period when economy increased. All these small villages in Bavaria, they were having had a new boom of visitors coming. And so those people who couldn't rent out their rooms, they tried to produce some handicrafts. And one of these handicrafts, I'm going to show you because I could manage to borrow it from a neighbor, reminded me of the teaching of the Hebrew faith, because the artist, he gave the source Talmud, and this was such an exotic name that it kept on clinging in my ears. My dad explained me that this is the Bible of the Israeli. So one of these handicrafts, I mean, in general, I show you, it's like this. So this is from my family still left. It's a small, in wax carved thing, and they just want to give hope. That was the period of depression. So people needed some hope. And here it says, when I'm translated, when I'm dead down, there's a small light shining from somewhere. But this is not what stuck in my mind. What stuck in my mind was this one. It's in wood, carved in wood. It's German, of course, but my translation will say, take care of your thoughts because they will turn into words. Take care of your words because they will turn into actions. Take care of your actions because they will become habits. Take care of your habits because they will form your character. And take care of your character because it will determine your destiny. So that rings and resonates to me the spirit of the Buddha's renowned first two verses from the Dhammapada, which some of you may know. They are Mano Bhubangama Dhamma, Mano Setta, Mano Maya, Manasa Je Paduttene, Bhasativa Karotiva, or in the second line it follows, Manasa Je Pasannene, Bhasativa Karotiva. So the meaning is that the mind precedes everything. It matters most, and everything is mind-made. And who with an impure mind performs any action of speech or body, to him suffering will follow. But who with a pure mind performs any action of speech or body, to him happiness will follow. So this reminded me very much to this quote of Talmud. But actually in Israel, then I was told that it's not found in the Talmud. Probably it was the artist who decided to use that name, and internet research shows that many people, it's put into many people's mouth nowadays, but still the spirit is very rousing, and the advice comprised in this council is similar to what the Buddha says. So the mind is the most important thing. What is lacking here, and the Buddha steps in with another, I may be allowed to quote another verse, which is also very renowned. It's Sabbapapasa akaranang kusalasa upasampada sa chitta pariyoda panang etang buddhana sasanang, which means abstraining from all unwholesome actions and performing wholesome ones, purifying one's mind. This is the teaching of all the Buddhas. So here a practical approach is given for any being who wants to preserve life, body health, and resources. So from the beginning of social contexts, beings wanted to live in harmony, and they wanted to have a secured background of peace and safety. And this has been their aspiration of humankind ever since. Now, Sīla is the term for the moral codex as highlighted in the teaching of the Buddha. And the first two lines, abstaining from all unwholesome actions and performing wholesome ones, lay the base and provide the base and the foundation and the stepping stone for this talk and the presentation that I would like to give. The third line will not be, there will not be the space for the third line, purifying one's mind, here today, but based on the development, clarity of mind, and the development of wisdom, this upholding of moral and ethical standards will develop and should turn from a self-enforced, compelling obligation into a natural and voluntary, automatic, habitual conduct based on self-observation. I would like to explain what I mean now in more detail by, again, you may allow me some personal experience should express what I meant. So I was raised in Bavaria, as you have already heard, and even though I was raised Protestant, it has been a very Catholic area and strong Catholic influence. There are beautiful monasteries around. And I was personally quite extremely impressed by the rules of the Catholic faith, the 10 Commandments. Even so, to be honest, I couldn't make much out of the first 5, but the last set, which later on reminds me on the Buddha's teaching, did have a deep influence on me. They are, most of you will be aware of, thou shalt not murder, thou shalt not commit adultery with somebody's spouse, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor, thou shalt not covet your neighbor's wife, and thou shalt not desire your neighbor's house, his field, or anything that is your neighbor's. As I said, I was quite impressed by these and tried to follow them as much as I could. I was known as an honest guy, as an honest boy. And whenever I did something wrong and I was asked whether I did it, yeah, everybody knew that I'm going to reply in the honest way, and I had to accept my reprimands in case. But over the years, till I reached puberty, I started to become more and more doubtful, because I felt and I saw that people around me, they were not really following these, and nothing happened. So I seemed to be, sort of the only fool around. Still, I had a lot of discomfort, and it reached a peak. And then I made a final decision. I tried to challenge God at around 14 or 15. I don't want to go into all the details of what I did, but I felt it was the worst thing I could do, a little bit of childish. On a Sunday after Mass, I went to the church, which was empty, and here I did what I wanted to do, and expected to be punished. I was quite having lots of sweat and shivering and waiting for the earth to open, and I was just waiting for punishment, some lightning or something. But I may say unfortunately, but of course fortunately nothing happened. So that was the moment where I lost faith. I decided there's not much sense for me to follow all these rules. Even I felt some inner discomfort by doing that, and my life turned upside down, and those commandments were of no use for me, like I felt they were of no use for others. So fortunately, a number of years later, in the early 70s, I followed a somewhat inner call to travel to India. I followed the hippie trail and came in contact with Dhamma and with Vipassana. I did my first courses, and this showed me again, once more, a different perspective, and it laid a base for the change for the better. But it took some years more, where then I had the chance to apply for a Pali course, and I learned some Pali. And with this, a second turning point in my life occurred. I learned to contemplate on the deeper meaning of how the Buddha formulates his commandments. They were called Sīla. Anyone who tries to follow the teaching of the Buddha has as a first step to follow and accept certain precepts. And I would like to go now into more detail of how they are formulated and explain a little bit of what the Pali meaning behind is. So I'm just reading, and I think you will see those 5 important precepts for anyone who follows. It's said for a householder especially. The first one refers to killing. Pānāti pāta veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyāmi. The second one, stealing. Adinnādāna veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyāmi. Sexual misconduct is the third one. Kāmeso micchājāra Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami. Then there's wrong speech. Musavada Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami. And the last one refers to any intoxication. It says Sura Meraya Macha Pamadatana Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami. So you have noticed, or anyone who follows the path notices, that the formula is Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami. I would like to look now into the details of this phrase. It is generally translated as abstaining, which is Veramani. Veramani literally means Vera, it's hatred, and Manati, to crush, though the characteristic of Veramani is that it does away with all kind of malice, and that is why it is translated as abstinence. It eliminates malice, it abandons it, and makes an end of it. The second part is Sikha Bhada, which is important to understand because Sikha means training and Pada means food, path, way. So it literally means it is a path of training. It's the way of training. One proceeds by that, and this is the foundation. It should be trained with the thought. That's what the commentary says. It should be trained. This abstinence should be trained. And the last one is personal pronoun I, samadhiyami, I undertake. I completely take upon myself. So one decides out of one's inner self-reflection to undergo a lifelong, step-by-step training of abstinence, which is and was to me, and that's why I was again thrilled and my life changed completely, a different approach than the commandments that I tried to follow in my early years, where it said, thou shalt not. Here it is self-commitment, and possible failure is included because it is a path of training, so it's ongoingly happening. So the vow of self-commitment needs to be pondered upon whatever one does through every moment of one's life. And with this, you learn to observe your volition behind it. And that's why I was thrilled reading these verses. I started with, watch your mind, your thoughts, because they turn into words. How to watch it? The volition behind each and everything one wants to perform vocally or physically is the important aspect to be observed. And that's what the Buddha then also says. The volition, the Pali word is cetana, is that what focuses and is associated with the mental factors in acting upon the respective object. Volition determines the moral and ethical quality of the intended action and thus generates karma. So that is why the Buddha says at one stage, one sutta, it is the volition that I call karma. For being governed by will, one performs an action by body, speech, or mind. And this is what these verses here said at the end. You know, they determine your good fortune or bad fortune. And there is also one line which I want to quote. When the Buddha requests repeated consideration, repeated reflection to be undergone by everyone, whether it's a householder or anyone, a monk who has left the household, any female or male, young or old, he says, Kamma Sakomi, Kamma is my only possession. Kamma Dayado, I am heir of my Kamma. Kamma Yoni, I am born of my Kamma. Kamma Bandhu, Kamma is my only relative. Kamma patisarano. Kamma is my own refuge. Yang kammang karisami. Kalyanang va. Papakang va. Tassa dayado bhavisami ti. Whatever kamma I perform, wholesome or unwholesome, I will be the heir thereof. Now coming back to the moral conduct as presented in these two lines, sabba papasa akaranam, so not doing of anything that is papa, evil, but on the other side, kusalasa upasampada, performing something that is good, shows that avoiding and abstinence is not an end in itself. It is the training of avoiding, but also of performing. So the Pali terms are Veramani and Charamani, Varita and Charita. Why you may come across the expression of Charitang and Varitang Sikkapada, the training of avoiding and performing, avoiding the negative and performing the positive. The commentary gives an example which I would like to share with you, which tries to make this understandable. The example is, here a person rows with a boat along a river, and it so happens that he passes a drowning person whose valuables are drifting along the surface. As a matter of fact, that person has the moral duty to do his best to save the man. But in this example, one may imagine he doesn't want to get into trouble, and he just rows on. Here it is actually true to say that he has not broken any of his precepts, but he has definitely lost the opportunity to develop positive virtues much higher than this. That is why the Buddha says, if those things are not performed which are rejected by the Buddha, saying, this should not be done, idang na kattapangti tang varitang, that is avoiding, but following the training of precepts has also been described by the Buddha, saying this should be done, idang kattapangti tang charitang, that is keeping. So with other words, the fundamental element, Veramani, the characteristic of abstention, it is the contemplation that avoidance of disturbing peace, harmony, happiness, and well-being of others is the foundation for peaceful engagement with other beings and one's social environment. Its final perspective is the performance of wholesomeness, charitang or charamani. So the first achievement is unblemished safeguarding of Sīla in the following three dimensions: neither to perform any act of unwholesomeness oneself, nor to support any such act physically or materially if performed by someone else, nor even by mental appreciation of what anyone else may do performing such unwholesomeness. And there is a second achievement, because if you avoid all the unwholesome, the negative, as human, one uses to do, to act, to think, to speak, then what is left is positive, is wholesome. So the second achievement is the development of the positive counterparts towards quasi-inherent performance of selfless help and loving support of others. So I would like to summarize each of these precepts here again. In this way, panatipata veramani outlaws killing, hurting, and torturing. It is the foundation for the development of compassion, love, and empathy with other beings. Adinadana Veramani forbids stealing and employment of such like supporting actions. It is the base for uprightness, contentedness with one's own possession, and the base for generosity, patience with the right means of livelihood, and it thus secures the possession of others. Kamiso Micha Jara Veramani avoids unfaithfulness and unwholesome sexual activity. It is the source for a healthy and martial relationship, establishing mutual confidence, contentment in marriage life, and celibacy. Musavada Veramani avoids telling direct falsehood, indirect falsehood, and breaking of promises. It opens the road to honesty, correctness, and truthfulness. And the last of the 5, Sura Mirayamache Pamadatana Veramani, prevents to indulge in intoxications, to eliminate drunkenness as the cause of various unwholesome activities. It assures a realistic base of watchfulness and alertness, and provides the foundation for the removal of ignorance. So now if we imagine someone who may manage to realize within himself or herself all these precepts, being completely freed of any animosity or aversion, dwelling with not a single trace of envy or jealousness, in full satisfaction and contentment with whatever assets one has. Freed from lust, one remains fully contented and happy with one's partnership, and on no occasion he diverges from the truth. One would never get worried, and never the feeling of remorse would occur, and there would be no urge for deluding oneself by intoxications, and one remains fully contented and satisfied with one's life and mental state. Imagine what a life it would be. So for this, the Buddha has paved and disclosed the path. For this, the daily step-by-step training remains twofold and is closely interrelated. Only from prevention of unwholesome actions, wholesome result, only with the base of a mind that avoids unwholesome tendencies, and where negative impacts are removed, positive, wholesome actions can derive. Here's one sutta that I would like to quote at the end of this so-called introduction now. The Buddha says, avoid the unwholesome. It is possible to avoid the unwholesome, because if it wasn't possible that unwholesome actions can be left behind, I wouldn't say avoid the unwholesome. But because it is possible that unwholesome actions can be left behind, therefore I say avoid the unwholesome. If this avoidance of unwholesome actions was to result in disadvantage and misery, I wouldn't tell you avoid the unwholesome. But because abandoning unwholesome actions result in welfare and happiness, I tell you avoid the unwholesome. Develop the wholesome. It is possible to develop the wholesome, because if it wasn't possible that wholesome actions can be developed, I wouldn't say so. Develop the wholesome. Because it is possible that wholesome actions can be developed, therefore I say, develop the wholesome. If by developing wholesome actions, disadvantage and misery were the result, I wouldn't tell you, develop the wholesome. But because developing of wholesome actions results in welfare and happiness, I tell you, develop the wholesome. So I would like to give a first summary of what I was just calling the introduction. It should be understood that one has to undergo a lifelong step-by-step training with the allowance of failure, which results in proper deliberation, along with the intention for future avoidance. Ongoing reflection of one's underlying volition behind each and everything one wants to perform vocally and physically. And there should also be repeated reflection with the awareness of the fact that whatever karma I perform, wholesome or unwholesome, I will be the heir thereof. And one needs to understand that the fact that Veramani is not an end in itself, but with that the avoidance of unwholesomeness aims at the performance of wholesomeness, which is called charita. So now let me try to provide more details. An ethical life needs the base of purity in action, the purity in speech, and purity in livelihood. Following section now tries to present quotes with different aspects of proceeding in the order of the precepts, where the Buddha highlights, starting with the analysis of Varitang, with some commentarial exegesis. It proceeds to the perspective of Charitang. The commentary follows the logical principle of reflecting on a detailed definition. What is the underlying volition of the act to be performed? How does this act manifest itself, and what are the karmic effects thereof? So, analyzing the breakage of any sila, the explanation of the commentary takes the following factors of judgment and discrimination also into consideration. What is the object? What is the intention or purpose? And what is the effect for the action to be performed? Is the act pre-planned? Is it spontaneous, or is it impulsive? Is it done out of abhorrence or hatred, out of envy or greed, or is it a combination of various factors? These considerations will then also have a different effect in one's karma. Now I would like to start in detail with the first precept, which is Panatipata Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami. The term Panatipato, literal, means Pana, which is a living, breathing being, and Adipato is destruction, refers to the deliberate and intentional destruction of the life of any sentient being. Different motivation resulting from greed, aggression, or delusion may cause such an act, and varying efforts have to be generated to perform it. Further, will various kinds of motives manifest themselves in different karmic effects. Killing may be spontaneous, out of the need to defend oneself, premeditated or well-planned, out of greed or hatred, even with the intention to torture. Likewise, mental and physical effort behind the respective action, the force behind such an act needs to be taken into account. In one of the sutta, in various suttas, but here one is quoted, he addresses Chunda, and he says, "Now Chunda, how is one made impure? There is the case where a certain person takes life, is quarrelsome, bloody-handed, and engaged in killing and slaying, and showing no sympathy towards living beings." This is one of the qualifications of Panatipata. And there is no question that all breakage of the precepts need to be avoided. But still, if we look at killing and killing naturally are not the same, and the karmic consequences vary. This can be seen in an example of different boys who may perform the very same act. Let's say one boy, out of his desire to help a spider that has fallen in water, tries to take it out of the water, squeezes one part of the body, and as a consequence, that spider may die. There's another boy that may step on a spider unintentionally without even noticing it, and as a consequence, that spider may die. Another boy may playfully destroy a spider's net and thus cause the spider's death. And again, another boy may premeditate it, hurt, and kill a spider aggressively. So there's different volitions, different efforts, and different activities having the same result. So that means the karmic results of these 4 boys may be different. The commentary defines when the act of killing is accomplished and then produces karmic consequences. So there are 5 constituents that have to be fulfilled. There must be a living being. There must be consciousness of that living being. There must be the intention to kill, the respective effort and act, and the death of that being. Then karmic effects will take place. It says, killing living beings results from the volition to kill by someone with full consciousness of that living being. This volition manifests itself through one or the other of the doors of body and speech and initiates action that leads to the approach and cutting off the life faculty. There is a special sutta where the Buddha addresses householders compared to monks. The householders should take care within their circumstances, within their daily lively activities, to perform their actions in such a way that 3 dimensions should not take place. One should neither oneself kill, nor encourage others, and nor mentally approve any killing done by others. He should neither kill any living being, nor cause others to kill, nor approve the killing done by someone else. He should have laid down his stick, which is a synonym for any weapon, anything that hurts, towards all beings in this world, whether strong or small. But similarly, doing physical harm, disfiguring, crippling, or torturing any other being falls under this category. And likewise, in respect to volition and effort behind that act, the karmic effects will differ. The karmic effects are shown in one sutta that is called the Chula Kamma Vibhanga Sutta, where the Buddha describes in more detail what is maybe the result, what is the result and maybe the result of certain actions. I read it in full, what is referring here to this precept. Here a young man, a certain woman, takes the life of living beings, is murderous, with hands full of blood, bent on violence and without sympathy for all beings, because they undertake and perform such acts. After the breakage of the body, after death, they reappear in the lower fields in state of suffering, perdition, and hell. In case after the breakage of body, after death, they do not reappear in the lower fields in states of suffering, perdition, and hell, then they arrive in the human field. Then wherever they appear, they will encounter a short life. Such is the conduct that results in short life. One takes the life of living beings, is murderous, hands full of blood, bent on violence without sympathy for all other beings. I would like, after each of the precepts, to shortly highlight what would ennoble this precept. And here, this first precept gets ennobled by the practice of compassion, by the practice of goodwill and metta and love for all beings. Someone who remains filled with the negative tendencies of aversion, animosity, and violence will always be lacking sympathy and empathy towards all beings, and happiness for oneself can never be achieved. Only when those tendencies get eradicated, one will be able to welcome the pivotal principle that all beings like to dwell in happiness and like to enjoy peace, and that all beings loathe suffering. Only then one can embrace the empathy, the compassion, the sympathy, and the understanding for all beings as the Buddha always displayed. So there is a few suttas where the Buddha sees people, especially boys, playing and giving some pain to some creatures, for example, fishes or snakes. And he always reflects upon it and says, why are you give pain if pain is disagreeable to you, to others? Why do you yourself desire happiness and take away the happiness of others? So this should be the base and is the base then for the practice of metta, as it is highlighted by the Buddha, which I would like to quote in a moment. He says that anyone who desires happiness and loathes death, pain, and torture should keep in mind that it is the same for all other beings, human and animals alike. So, therefore, when the Buddha advises how to practice metta, he advises to first start with wishing happiness for oneself by repeatedly considering, may I myself be happy, be free from suffering, be free from animosity, from ill will, free from anger. May I surround myself with happiness. In this way, the mind filled with metta is being endowed in metta. But if one develops thus, may I be happy, having made oneself an eyewitness in this way, like I desire to be happy, loathe suffering, want to live, and do not want to die, the same must be good for other beings. And thus the desire for well-being and happiness for others arises within. Having now first directed metta towards oneself as a starting point in order to proceed smoothly, one should develop metta towards all beings in the same way. May all beings be free from enmity, free from ill will, free from animosity. May they surround themselves with happiness. May all beings alive, all the living, all creatures, all individuals, all those who having attained personality, may they be free from enmity, free from ill will, free from animosity, and may they surround themselves with happiness. There's this well-known Karanya Metta Sutta that shows how a mind of somebody having left aside all these animosities could work. He should fill his mind with boundless metta towards whatever living beings there may be, without exception, weak or strong, long or huge, medium or small, subtle or gross, visible or invisible, dwelling far or near, born or coming to birth. May all beings be happy within themselves. Let these thoughts of boundless metta pervade the entire universe, above, below, and across, without any obstruction, hatred, or enmity. Whether he stands, walks, or sits, he lies down as long as he is awake. Let him develop boundless metta towards all beings. Thus, the first precept would be brought to perfection. Second precept is adinadana, veramani sikkhapadam samadhiyami. Again, the literal definition shows how delicate is what is behind it. If you the word put it into different parts, adina and adana. So the word is adinadana, but if you separate it, it's not, dina, given, and adana is taking. So literally it would mean taking what is not given. In this sense, not taking anything that is not directly given to one is a breakage of this precept. This precept prevents any offense against the property of others and encourages wholesome means of sources of revenue. In the same sutta, when Buddha talks to Junda, he gives a general description. Somebody takes what is not given. Going to villages or forests, he takes by theft, possessions, and things belonging to others that have not been given to him. The commentary goes further and says, carrying off others' goods, stealing, and robbery. That is adinadana. Herein, what is not given is another's possession, which the other may use legally according to his or her wish, without incurring punishment or censure, the one who belongs these things. Likewise, the commentary highlights the disruptive motivation that generates acts of misappropriate the rightful belongings of others by ways of theft, robbery, snatching, trickery, deception, lying, willful destruction. These may be direct stealing, indirect stealing, and actions analogous to this. Taking what is not given is based on the volition to steal by being fully aware of this act of theft and fully aware of the other's possession, that this belongs to another. And this initiates action that leads to the approach, the effort, and the act of stealing. Its base is usually greed, envy, jealousy, and such like. And for an act of theft to be accomplished and having chemical consequences, the following constituents have to be present: another's possession, the consciousness that it is another's possession, the intention to take it, the approach and effort, and the act of that theft itself. Now, looking into the karmic effects and the moral shame, it is said that the karma depend on the value of the stolen object. The higher its value, the more blameworthy is the deed. In case of equal value of objects, the act is more blamable when the object belongs to one of supreme virtue, and less blameworthy when the object belongs to one whose moral qualities are inferior. I have quoted the Dhammika Sutta, the sutta for the householders. Here again it says a householder should not steal oneself, not encourage others, and not mentally approve anything that is taken, what is not been given. One should refrain from taking anything in full knowledge. Neither should one cause others to steal, nor approve the stealing done by someone else. One should stay completely aloof of any theft. Again, there are ways of ennobling this precept, as said also here to Junda. Abandoning the taking of what is not given, he abstains from taking what is not given. He does not take by theft, going in villages or forests, possessions or things belonging to others that have not been given to them. So one should examine one's volition and see that no intention to harm evokes any negative activity. One should likewise verify that no visible negative side effects of one's livelihood and professional activity may occur, and one should always establish righteousness in all respect. This refers to, and here again the commentary gives a number of points that could be followed and should be followed. It refers to, first, rightfulness in work and action. Engaging in work as carefully and earnestly as possible, not misusing means nor misappropriating the time one is paid for on base of avoidance of all wrong means of livelihood, such as there are these 5 types of trades one should avoid: trade in weapons, trade in human beings, trade in meat, trade in intoxicants, and trade in poison. The second point is steadfast effort and vigilance. There are 2 crucial constituents of wholesome livelihood, which are steadfast effort and vigilance. The first is, by whatever way a clansman earns his living, whether by farming, by trading, by rearing cattle, by archery, by employment under the king, or by any other kind of craft, he performs these actions skillfully and diligently. Established in the ability to discriminate proper methods, he fulfills and arranges his duties. This is called the accomplishment of steadfast effort. Second is, whatsoever wealth a householder possesses, having obtained it by his vigorous effort, collected by the strength of his arm, by the sweat of his brow, honest and acquired by righteous means, that he protects well by guarding and watching it. May neither king seize it, thieves not steal it, fire not damage it, water not drown it, nor inimical hairs remove this. This is the accomplishment of vigilance. Then there is righteousness regarding people. One should act fair and just with all one associates in regard to his profession, employees, workmen, etc. Righteousness in regards to objects. One should be honest about the value and quality, not selling inferior as superior, old as new, and such like. And the last and most important is the aspect of sharing and that of generosity. Whatever one has achieved by blameless means should be shared. The Buddha says in one sutta, if beings knew, as I know, the fruit of giving and sharing, they would not eat without having given, nor would they continue being overpowered by the stain of selfishness in their minds. They would not even eat what were their last bites and their last morsel without having shared, if there was someone to receive their gift. So in this way, the second precept would be ennobled. That would be the charita aspect of the second precept. And there are a few more verses that show how proper sharing, proper generosity should be done. While giving a donation, deciding for a donation, it is said, just before one gives, one should feel happy. While one is giving, one's heart should rejoice. After having given, one should feel delighted. This is the attainment of giving. But it also says that gifts should be given with discrimination. Thus given, they yield great fruits. If gifts have been given with discrimination, the donors will pass to the heavenly fields. Giving dana with discrimination was praised by the Sugata. This is the way of those established in Dhamma. Discrimination here means that you should properly reflect on what is the purpose of your donation and what will be the result. So giving something for a drunkard has a different effect if giving someone who is sick, or giving something to a monk, etc. Again, the Kula Chula Kamma Vibhanga Sutta gives an example. Here, young man or a certain woman is one who does not give anything to ascetics or Brahmins, no food, nor drink, clothing or vehicles, garlands, scents or perfumes, no bedding, dwelling, nor light. Because he undertakes and performs such kind of actions after the breakage of body, after death, he reappears in the lower fields, in the states of misery. In case after the breakage of the body, he does not reappear in the lower fields, in the states of misery, then he arrives in the human field. Wherever he appears, he will be poor. Such young man is the conduct that leads to poverty. That is, one is not a donor to ascetics or Brahmins, no giver of food or drink, clothing or vehicles, garlands, scents or perfumes, bedding, dwelling or light. But here, a young man or a young woman support ascetics or Brahmins with food or drink, clothing or vehicles, garlands, scents or perfumes, with beddings, dwelling or light. Then in the case after the breakage of body, they do not reappear in the higher fields, in heavenly spheres. Then they arrive in the human world. Wherever they appear, they will be rich. Such young man is the conduct that leads to wealth. That is, one is a donor to ascetics or Brahmins, a giver of food or drink, clothing or vehicle, garlands, scents or perfumes, bedding, dwelling or light. Now the third precept, Kamesu Micchācara. First of all, we need to see that this precept gets subdivided into two parts. The first part is for householder. The second part is for someone who has left the householder's life. For the householder, the formula is Kamesu Micchācara Veramani, and for someone who has left the householder's life, it is Abrahmacharya Veramani Sikkhapadam Samadhiyami. The third precept is known as being the most difficult to be maintained. Sexual desire, lust, passion, and greed contain such deep-rooted inner force that manifests in various outlets. There's many examples where the Buddha highlights the pitfalls and drawbacks around this precept. There's one sutta where he lets hold a man over a pit filled with glowing smokeless charcoals, and this man enjoys his life, but two other strong men were holding him. It's a bit of a cruel example to show the depth of it, holding him over this pit with the charcoals that are glowing. And then it is asked, would the man try to avoid falling down? And the reply is, yes, of course, because he knows, I will fall down in this hole filled with charcoals, and I will subsequently undergo death or deathly suffering because of this. And then the Buddha says, in the same way a noble disciple should reflect. Sensual pleasures have been compared with the hole filled with charcoal. that prompts much suffering and immense despair. The danger therein is even more. And he suggests remembering this and forestall equanimity to come out of these desire for sensual pleasures. Now the first part, Kamesu Miccācara, for the householder, is explained that its breaking in general produces unrest, anguish, and trouble for those concerned. Someone who engages in sensual misconduct and gets sexually involved with those who are protected, that's the antique explanation, are protected by their mothers, their fathers, their parents, their brothers, their sisters, their relatives, their clan of their Dhamma, with those with husbands, those who entail punishments, or even those crowned with flowers by other men. He should not get in any sexual conduct, and that is sexual misconduct with any of these. It is explained that misconduct in sensual pleasures means sensual pleasures in regard to indulging in sexual intercourse. Misconduct is entirely blameworthy foul conduct. Its characteristic is the volition to transgress restriction, manifesting itself through the body door by way of unrighteous desire. Now there is various detailed explanation of what is transgressing means, but I think the general idea is, and it refers also to mostly those who are engaged with someone else, who are underage, or who are bought with money like prostitutes. This all refers to sexual misconduct. Maintaining this precept in the correct form also includes all kinds of acts of wrongfully taking liberty towards women, including fondling, caressing, courting, etc. The karmic effects are more blamable the higher the ethical standards of the respective other persons is, and vice versa. The sexual misconduct is less blamable if the person of limits lacks in moral qualities of Sīla, and is more blamable if the person is endowed with moral qualities of Sīla. And the sexual misconduct is accomplished in the following four constituents. A person that what is called is off limits, the mind to engage, the effort to get engaged, and the consent to the actual union of sexual organs. The Dhammika Sutta for the householder says, a wise one should refrain from all sexual misconduct like he would avoid a burning pit of charcoals, referring to this simile. And if unable to lead the holy life, which means the brahmachari, he should never transgress with any other's wife. The second part of it, for those who have left the householder's life, is literally brahmacharya, and is the negation of brahmacharya, holy life, spiritual life, which is meant it's a life in celibacy. Leading not the holy life means to maintain not the highest conduct. Leading not the highest life means intention, volition to transgress into unrighteous practice, not in accordance with the holy life, which occurs through the body door by engaging in actual copulation. So ennobling this precept for a householder, it fosters contentment with and devotion to one dedicated partner, even so sexual relation is legitimate. It is said, abandoning sexual misconduct, he abstains from sexual misconduct. He does not get sexually involved with those who are protected by their mothers, referring to the beginning, their fathers, their parents, their brothers, their sisters, their relatives, their clan, or their Dhamma, those with husband, those who entail punishments, or even those crowned with flowers by another man. And for someone who has left the householder's life and has decided to live a life of a brahmacharya, any sexual involvement, not only in deed or words, but also in thought, is taboo. There's a special sutta that shows in a nice way how far one's mental involvement in passion, which is can be very subtle, can go. At one time, there was a Brahmin by the name of Janusoni who approached the Bhagava, the Buddha, and asked him, what is it that damages the holy life, which should be completely and utterly pure, and what leads to the corruption of it? And he asks, what is done that this holy life gets torn, spotted, blemished, and stained? And then the Buddha goes into a long list, starting with something which should not be done, and yet he agrees to something which also should not be done. It's a long, interesting sutta. I'll just make a summary of it. So, a certain ascetic or Brahmin claims to lead the life of purity rightly, for he does not enter into any actual sexual intercourse with women, yet he agrees to anointing of, and then the next thing is he does agree to anointing of perfumes or oil by massage, rubbing, bathing, or shampooing by women. He does not even do this, but he does joke, play, and amuse himself with women. But he does not do, so he does neither do this, nor that, but he does gaze and stare at women eye to eye. But even if he does not do this, he does listen to the sound of women through the wall or through the fence as they laugh or talk or sing or weep. Even if he does not this, but does recall laughs and talks and games that he had with women formerly. Even if he does not that, he does watch a householder or householder's son entirely upon indulging or enjoying fivefold sensual pleasures. All this corrupts, whenever he does it, the life, the spiritual life, which is interesting, especially that even the mental memory of any of these acts does spoil one's purity. So now going to the fourth precept, which is called Musavada Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami. And again, it's a precept that probably everyone knows. It's the most difficult to uphold, how quickly something slips out of one's mouth, which one better wouldn't have said, or one exaggerates here. So it's the most delicate next to the most difficult to maintain, which with the passion being the deepest. So the Buddha says, and that's why he says so, a person that transgresses one thing, there is, I dare say, no evil deed whatsoever he does not perform. And what is this one thing? This, because, is someone telling a lie full of conscience. For a person who speaks falsehood and transgresses this one thing, telling a lie consciously, he does give up complete concern for the world beyond, and there does not exist an evil deed he might not perform. So he shows the importance of what is right speech. And right speech is abstaining from lying, from slander and backbiting, abstaining from harsh words, and abstaining from frivolous talk. This is called right speech. So it's 4 parts, and I'll try to go through each one of them individually. The first one is Musavada. wrong speech. When someone has been called as witness to council, a group meeting, a gathering of his relatives, his guild, or a royal court, "Come, good man, tell us what you know." And he doesn't know, he says, "I know." And if he does know, he says, "I don't know." If he hasn't seen, he says, "I have seen." If he has seen, he says, "I haven't seen." Thus he deliberately tells lies for his own sake, for the sake of another, or for the sake of some gain. Now the commentary again highlights the mental disposition and the intention to speak falsehood. This is the precondition and proves that the respective volition to deceive others, to disturb their mental calm, or to simply while away their time always precedes wrong speech, which is then accompanied by the effort to put this in effect. False is the effort by speech or body to destroy welfare by one determined on deceiving. False speech is the intention producing effort by speech or body to deceive another by one determined on deceiving. This is qualified through the following volition. The characteristic of false speech is the volition of one desiring to communicate to another something untrue as being true. It is the volition that causes such an act of communication. Here again, looking into the karmic effects, a comparison is made, and false speech is defined as less blameworthy when the welfare that is destroyed is slight, and it is more blameworthy when the welfare destroyed is great. In the same way, it is defined as less blameworthy when the intention is dominated by the desire to maintain one's own possessions and resistance to part with them. When another's well-being is destroyed as a result of speaking false witness, it is more blameworthy. Again, the following components have to be fulfilled: an untrue situation, the intention to deceive, the effort to do so, and the communication of the falseness to others. The single means are one's own person only. If one's volition resulting in the effort to perform a lie on another by means of body or speech takes effort in another person, and that one understands the meaning, then one is imprisoned in the trap of karmic consequences resulting from the moment of this volition to deceive. This is actually something I was teacher, one could see with the students. As long as they not have become a professional liar, there was some, they had already the lie present. They didn't make their homework and immediately they had an excuse. But others who were not so professional, they, as you know, the face starts turning red and so on. So as long as one is always a negative effect on oneself that could be seen by others, as long as one has not become really cool in speaking those lies. The Dhammika Sutta, again, the sutta for the householder, says, whether in an assembly or any gathering, one should not tell any lie to even a single person, nor should one cause anyone else telling a lie, nor approve the telling of any untruth by anyone else. One should completely stay aloof of all untruths. The next part of it is pusa navaja, malicious speech. That is what he has heard here, he tells there, in order to divide those people from those people there. Whatever he has heard there, he tells here, to divide these people from those people there. Thus breaking apart those who are united and stirring up friction between those who have broken apart. He loves discord, finds pleasure in discord, enjoys discord, and speaks things that create discord. Again, the commentary highlights the underlying intention to divide and insult the following way. Malicious speech is speech that, if spoken, generates in the heart of the person to whom it is addressed affection for oneself and lack of regard for another. Of these, the root is volition, and therefore it receives the designation malicious speech and such like. Based on the volition of one with a defiled mind, which prompts effort by body or by speech to cause either division among others or to generate likewise esteem for oneself, that is what defines malicious speech. And the kamic effect takes place when the following constituents are fulfilled. There must be others to be divided, the intention to separate, thus these will be alienated and estranged, or the desire to endear oneself, thus I will be liked and become trustworthy, and the respective effort and that meaning being recognized by the other person. The next one is harsh, abusive speech, parusaya vajaya. One speaks words that are insolent, harsh, bitter to others, abusive of others, provoking anger and obstructing concentration. The last one is quite interesting, obstructing concentration. All kinds of speech which make both oneself and another callous, speech which in itself is harsh and neither pleasant to the ear nor pleasant to the heart, all these fall under this category. It is the entirely callous volition and intention prompting effort by body or by speech to hurt another vital feelings. A differentiation again is made in the effect and the culpability, whether such kind of speech is addressed to people with less or more qualities. It is fulfilled when there are the following constituents: another to be abused, an angry mind, the act of abusing, and the person abused. Now the last one, sambapalapa, idle chatter, frivolous talk, useless talk. He speaks at inappropriate times, speaks what isn't factual, what isn't in accordance with any goal, with the Dhamma or the Vinaya. He speaks words that are not worth treasuring. His speech is out of place, unreasonable, without purpose, and not leading anywhere. There are various suttas where the Buddha explains what is, he calls it tirajana kata, which means a talk that is level, going from here to there without meaning, nothing, to be really considered and not giving any benefit. But it's probably too less time now to go into all this. In general, it's talking about, war, kings, armies, drink, clothing, etc. This is especially for monks. And for the householders, it is just idle chatter, meaningless gossip. Gossip is the unwholesome volition causing efforts by body or by speech to communicate something that is purposeless. It is less blameworthy when it is indulged less, more blameworthy when indulged in a lot. There are two constituents having preference to purposeless stories and the telling of such stories. Looking into today's media, I wonder what would fall under this category or what would not fall under this category. Even it may be amusing, most of it doesn't proceed with the perspective giving any benefit to anyone rather than wasting one's time. So now, how can we ennoble this precept in its 4 ways? So there is an additional point that is mentioned in the commentaries, how a householder, especially a Buddha, should perform one's livelihood and purify it by avoiding any of the following, like deceitful talk, boastful talk, giving a hint, trickery, and desiring gain with gain. It just happens mostly in day-to-day life that sometimes one wants something and doesn't want to say it directly, but is giving a hint. The same has been the case for bhikkhus. So it is indirectly pointing out, talking near the subject, mentioning something that one wants but not directly. Or another description is indication, which is an indication, again, if there's something that one wants. For example, there's an example giving. A bhikkhu may say, "Oh, are these milk-drinking calves?" And the kid who's just, taking care of these calves says, "Yes, these are milk-drinking calves." And the bhikkhu may say, "But if these were milk-drinking calves, the bhikkhus would certainly be getting milk." So in such a way, one communicates what one wants through back door. The same thing is there's deceitful talk. So all these kind of talks should likewise be avoided, and they also fall under this precept, even so they're not directly mentioned in this 4th. Now I'm coming to the ennobling. Again, he addresses Chunda, and he says, there is the case where a certain person, abandoning wrong speech, abstains from wrong speech. When he is called as witness to a council, a group meeting, a gathering of his relatives, his guild or royal court, "Come, good man, tell us what you know." He doesn't know, he says, "I don't know." If he does know, he says, "I know." If he hasn't seen, he says, "I haven't seen." And if he has seen, he says, "I have seen." Thus he doesn't consciously tell a lie for his own sake, for the sake of another, or for the sake of a little reward. Abandoning wrong speech. He abstains from wrong speech. He speaks the truth, holds up the truth, is trustworthy, reliable, not deceiving the world. Abandoning malicious speech, he abstains from malicious speech. Having heard something here, he does not spread it elsewhere in order to divide these people. Having heard something there, he does not spread this in order not to cause dissension amongst those people here. Thus he reconciles those who have broken up and supports those who are united. He laughs and finds pleasure in concord, delights in harmony, and utters words that generate harmony. Abandoning abusive speech, he abstains from abusive speech. Whatever speech is polite, is soothing to the ear, is affectionate, and moves the heart, is appealing many and pleasing many. Such speech he utters. Abandoning useless talk and gossip, he abstains from useless talk and gossip. He speaks at the right time about facts, which are in accordance with the goal, with Dhamma and Vinaya. He speaks words that are worth treasuring, seasonable, reasonable, full of purpose, and leading to the goal. This is the general description of how to ennoble this precept. And there is especially the qualification that there should be talk, speech that is well spoken and not badly spoken, that is faultless and not blameworthy, when it has 5 characteristics. These 5 are: should be spoken at the proper time, it should be spoken truthfully, It should be spoken gently. It should provide benefit and advantage to those who listen. And it should be spoken with a mind filled with metta. These are the 5 characteristics that speech should be endowed with. And it is well spoken and not badly spoken. It is faultless and not blameworthy to the wise. So this was the 4th precept, and I'll conclude with the last precept now, with this precept that refers to an unfortunate habit of many. We just were visiting the States, and as I said in the past, I also had broken my precepts, and of course we're smoking marijuana at times. And after coming back to Vipassana, I've completely stopped. And with my wife, we were just passing some of the roads, and suddenly where there was a strong smell of marijuana in the air, and we passed by a big factory. It's called, just crossing the border to Oregon. We didn't know about that. It's legal now, and the whole air was, even in the car, we could smell it. And the whole, marijuana, cannabis factory. So, it's become quite common, like in the olden days again. But still, it's not beneficial for someone who likes to walk the path of the Buddha. So the literal explanation of this precept is quite interesting. It's Sura Mireya Macha Pamada Tana Veramani. Sura is something that is distilled for concentration of flavor and strength. Liquor. Mireya is when it is fermented. And the process of fermenting and getting distilled is, we have this, I think you call it apple cider. We have apple boy. It starts like in being an apple juice that you fill in this bottle, in these containers of wood, and then it gets fermented and it gets more and more alcohol. So here the Pali expression describes from the very beginning of getting fermented, Mireya, it becomes worse, Sura. And the result is that it is matcha. Matcha literally means it is bewildering and besotting the mind. And a noun also in English you can see mad. It refers to that Indo-Aryan language. Pamada means negligent carelessness. And Tana, which is a place or a reason or ground for. So it's a very delicate description that is in this expression, Sura Mireya Macha Pamada Tana Veramani, which means anything that causes bewildering and causes negligence is falling under this. Even Pamadātana also means places of negligence, like pubs, bars, etc., where the tendency to drink and intoxicate is very large. So this is what the meaning here is. All drugs that cause this maddening matcha fall under this, besotting the mind and the damage of person's health. The Dhammika Sutta for a householder says explicitly, a layman who has decided to apply this Dhamma should not indulge in the drinking of intoxicants, neither should he cause others to drink, nor approve the drinking done by others, having realized its intoxicating effects. Through intoxication, foolish people perform evil deeds and cause others to heedlessness. One should shun all intoxication, this source for demerit, which bewilders the mind and is a delight for foolish people. There are various suttas where the Buddha highlights what will be the result when neglecting these precepts. it is actual waste of one's, and if one thinks and from one's, experience or what one observes, it's true. It's actual waste of one's substance and wealth. It is increasing tendency to quarreling, liability to sickness, diminishing of good report, tendency to exposure of one's private parts, and the fading of intellect. Also, this precept can be ennobled, charitam. It is the determination of avoidance that circumvents pitfalls, and it is the quality of watchfulness, awareness, and vigilance. So there is watchfulness and moderation in food. The first effort to be made to remain in good physical and mental health. Then it's very important to take proper care and assess one's own capacities and aptitudes. It says one's duties should always be in line with one's capabilities and not overestimated to put oneself under pressure, nor should the duties one engages in get disregarded by taking them lightly. This means knowing exactly what amount of work needs to be accomplished under what circumstances to achieve the best result in the most efficient ways. The next one is awareness over one's behavior, which is achieved by thorough self-observation, self-recollection, and self-possession. This comprises proper cognitions of what one is going to do or to say, along with reflection on why and how one is going it to utter, and to act accordingly. Careful consideration of positive and negative aspects of the effect of oneself and others reduces troubles and regret or revocation to a minimum of something said or done. And then there is this watchfulness in keeping company of beneficial friendship and loyal friends. The Pali expression here is kalyana mitra. One who is a supporter should be seen as a loyal friend. One who remains the same during happy and difficult times, such should be seen as a loyal friend. One who provides beneficial advice should be seen as a loyal friend, and one who is full of sympathetic goodwill should be seen as a loyal friend. One should, wherever one lives, associate, communicate, and discuss with those householders and their sons, young or old, that are well established in morality and well established in faith, well established in Sīla, that are generous and established in Panya. One should always try to match with the faith of the faithful, with the Sīla of the virtuous, and with the generosity of the generous, and with the Panya of the wise. That is what is called upholding beneficial friendship, upholding kalyana mitrata. And there's a last one that is important, that is vigilance in understanding the ultimate principle of nature. And we have to see that whoever gets intoxicated, he will never be able, or least be able, to follow up these vigilances, these awarenesses, and these suggestions that were just made. So there's vigilance in understanding the ultimate principle in the nature, which is change and impermanence. Thus, contact with the desirable or undesirable will not result in losing one's balance. One realizes the highest welfare, whatever the vicissitudes of life may be. One's mind remains unshaken, sorrowless, stainless, and secure. That is why the Mangala Sutta, the Sutta for the householder, says, Puttassa lokadammehi chittang yassa nakampati, asukang virachang himang, etang mangala muttamang. So it is the highest welfare to remain, whatever happens, unshaken, sorrowless, stainless, and secure. So to summarize and to come to an end, I have tried to highlight various aspects of the moral and ethical healthy lifestyle as proposed by the Buddha. We started with the verses and the famous quote from the Dhammapada, Sarpa Papasa Akaranang Kusalasa Upasampada, as abstaining from unwholesome actions and performing wholesome ones, and Sachitta Pariyodapanang Etang Buddhana Sasanang, is added by purifying one's mind, and this is the teaching of the Buddha. We have discussed especially the first two lines, which refer to Sīla. Let me look back in what has been said. One remains aware that one undergoes a lifelong step-by-step training. One should have a constant check on one's volition behind everything one intends to do, to say, and thus realize that it's one's karma one performs. To realize that from avoidance veramani, which is not an end in itself, it is this avoidance as base that one can perform wholesomeness, charitam. It is the empathy, compassion, and love with all other beings that undermines all forms of animosity. It is contentedness, being satisfied with one's own possession, and based and earned through upright, fair, and honest means of livelihood, generosity in sharing with others, and kindness in one's behavior, which weakens all forms of covetousness and avarice. It is maintaining a healthy and marital relationship in mutual confidence, contentment in marriage life or celibacy, which undercuts the strong sting of lust. It is honesty and truthfulness in one's thoughts, words and actions, which do away with all forms of falseness. And it is acceptance and contented approval of one's life's circumstances that shuns the desire for all forms of besotting stimuli by maintaining clarity and mental sanity, a healthy and necessary base for the development of wisdom. To conclude with, I just want to say a couple of words for the last line that we had not the time to discuss, which is Sa Chitta Pariyodapanang, purifying one's mind. The Buddha has one time said, someone who, delighted with the base of Sīla that he has attained, never rouses his mind further to engage in the practice of meditation, and remains satisfied with one's moral standards as he does not engage himself to further progress. Such Sīla carries the characteristic of being conducive to stagnation. Now, Sīla should turn and is the base of an integrated part and an indispensable foundation of what the Buddha calls the Noble Eightfold Path, which then provides further progress. Here the next step is to learn and establish the maintenance of sati, awareness of whatever one intends, speaks, or does. Again, the Buddha says to his son Rahula, with awareness sati as doorkeeper, the noble one renounces what is unwholesome, pursues what is wholesome, renounces what is blamable, and pursues what is blameless, and in this very way preserves himself in purity of life. The next step following the sati is the practice of self-observation through Vipassana meditation, where one establishes insight wisdom and purifies one's mind. One can mature towards emancipation only if by retaining the precepts in day-to-day life provides the proper foundation and stepping stone in combination with the elements of awareness, sati, and the purifying wisdom of Vipassana. Spiritual development cannot be achieved by merely upholding moral conduct and by means of abstention. It needs to be completed by the development of all the other factors, likewise, and should turn into one's natural conduct and become one's inherent character. That is why the title Deeper Aspects of Sīla was chosen. In this way, Sīla assures a realistic foundation for sati, watchfulness and alertness, and for the development of insight wisdom, which then in turn provides a firm foundation for the removal of ignorance and development of wisdom. No act of unwholesomeness can be performed without some feeling of uneasiness or discomfort in the body. Likewise, thoughts related to anger, animosity, harm, greed, or dishonesty, or the volition under the influence of any of these will always manifest themselves in their disruptive character for a mindful person. With one's development of the alarm clock of awareness, sati, which will ring immediately when something turns wrong on the physical level, and similar, the alarm clock of vipassana will likewise ring loud when unwholesome thoughts occur on the mental level. In this way, unwholesome mental states, papaka akusala dhamma, cannot too easily slip into and then dominate one's thought process, resulting in unwholesome acts. Likewise, the wholesome mental states, kusala dhamma, will ease and alleviate one's thought process by supporting the factors towards insight wisdom. In this way, one will be able to execute what is the teaching of all Buddhas, sabba papasa akaranam, kusalasa upasampada, sachitta pariyoda panam. Sīla may pave the path, may all be established in Sīla, well-founded in Sīla, and all develop those wholesome qualities that they will not decrease and only increase. May all be happy. End of the talk.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Well, I know I had a lot of questions myself, so I'm sure audience members also came up with some. So now we can do some questions from the audience and see if we have some time for that. Okay, so maybe we'll start with some of the easier ones, or they seem easier, not sure. So here's one question. Eating fish and meat, milk and cheese, is this a breakage of Sīla?
Don't know if it's easier. Also, it might be more difficult to reply according to today's timing or today's area, because maybe I can start with a short historical occurrence at the time of the Buddha, where Devadatta, the well-known antagonist of Buddha, he wanted to create his own sangha, and he suggested or requested from Buddha to have some more dudhangas. That is called dudhanga, means stricter, observances, and one of them was, for example, that they should sleep only under the trees, or eat only the root bark of the trees, and never eat meat and fish. Now the Buddha replied that those who, there were 10 of these, but the Buddha replied, those who would like to follow these observances, they can do, but those who he cannot request them. But in regards to eating fish and meat, he has, it was called Ti Koti Parisuddhang. That means three parts need to be purified. And in short, he requested the bhikkhus, if they were to see someone walking out in the forest with a gun or with an arrow to kill some animal, or if they have heard that they have come, they should inquire if this was done for them or if it was for the family. And when they next day they got this meal in the bowl, and the reply was, well, that was done for us, and you just share out, then they could eat it. So in the same way, they should, if they were suspecting it, then they had to ask every time, or when they were walking on alms round and they found that there was meat in the dishes, and they asked, is it done for us? And they said, though it was done, our normal food, then they could eat it. So coming back to our modern industrial time, I think, first of all, in this way, it is not breaking of Sīla. I think it's very clear, because what is in the supermarket is not killed for oneself. But still, people nowadays quite rightly find that the cattle farming and all this product is not really, is always involved with killing, even milk and cheese production. So I suggest that, it's an individual choice. If you want to really have Sīla followed up in the 3 ways, even mentally, you may say, yes, I appreciate, because I can get my milk, I can get my meat, I appreciate that it's killed, then leave it aside. But of course, it cannot be requested. And I think it's not directly breakage of Sīla. And also, if you just, one more sentence, if you join tofu, the tofu, you just leave aside everything and eat tofu, and then you find that the Amazonian forests are cut, and so many creatures are, their life atmosphere, their circumstances are taken, so soya can be planted. How does it go? Or wherever you go in the supermarket, I think, okay. So to reply in short, no, it's not supposed to be a breakage of Sīla, but probably it's a choice of everyone's self to think whether he wants to support it mentally by taking it.
Okay. So you can't win, basically. Even if you eat
today, I don't know where you could win. Yes.
Yeah.
Very difficult. You invest in stocks, you never know where to invest to if you think, and then you find, well, they're going into weapons, even if you didn't know it, some small thing. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Is apple cider, here's another question, is apple cider vinegar is also considered an intoxicant?
No, I don't think vinegar is an intoxicant. I don't know how it's produced, but I don't think it the thing I think is what contains alcohol, how much and what is the volition to take alcohol, right? If it may contain alcohol and you notice it, better don't take. But if it doesn't, then and vinegar, I don't think it contains alcohol. But the way how it is produced, I think that's the meaning. Is your intention to get intoxicated? Is your intention to have the effect that people want to have when they take some alcohol, some intoxicants?
Right. When one, having performed misconduct, when asked, does not respond to the question or hides the truth, is he or she breaking Sīla?
There is a sutta. How does one feel when one is asked and one does not respond to the question? Actually, the purification of Sīla, and that is what I wanted to refer to as sutta. The Buddha, at one time, he talked to Rahula, his son, that he should always confess whatever he has done wrong and not hide it, because this hiding remains mentally a kind of remorse feeling, or always mental restless. But confess to an elder, confess to if you're asked, and promise to yourself not to do it again. I think that's the proper way to proceed with such things.
Yeah. Okay, so here's a question. Say my grandfather suffers from cancer, but he doesn't know it, and the doctor has told the family he only has not very long to live, short time to live. Should I tell him the truth? And a similar question someone sent, what if revealing the truth will cause disturbance or disharmony?
There is, again, a qualification of what the Buddha says. I didn't take it up. That's in the Visuddhimagga. There is the combination of what is Satya and Bhuta, true and factful, what is Manapa and Piya, what is liked and agreeable to the one who hears it, what is Atta Sanghita, what is connected with benefit for the one who listens and hears what is said, and there is the opposite, so it is not true. So when shall one speak properly? And there's two options. It is maybe true, factful, plus liked and not liked or agreeable, but it must always have benefit for the one who hears it. And then the Buddha knows the right kale, anyu, the right time to say this. And likewise, if it must always be true, of course, but even if it is unliked, the Buddha knows if it is by benefit, the right time to say this. So I think I don't want to run up to my, grandpa and say, hey, grandpa, do you know you got cancer a few months more and then you're gone? I wouldn't do this. And if the grandpa asks, I think the truth should be given to him. And it may be even a relief to that person, because probably some people feel, even if they don't know that they're sick. But again, I think that is something that each individual needs to decide for him or herself, in such a situation. And important is, I would say, kala anyu, know the right time to reply to that, know the right time to say this.
Thank you. Another one. My pet is seriously ill and is suffering a lot. The veterinarian suggests I give him some medicine so he can die. Is this correct?
Well, the volition here is not to kill this pet. The volition is to take it out of suffering, I would say. This is the most important thing. And again, it's an individual decision. I think it's not counted as breaking of Sīla, even if I support the killing. But here I see all these Western movies, right? The horse rides and suddenly, something happens and then it cannot go further. And then the guy takes his gun and finishes the horse out of compassion, out of goodwill. So I think, yes, but it's a difficult situation, but it depends, again, I would say, on the individual situation and on the suffering, on the case of suffering.
Okay. Here's one. If one develops one's character by habits, and at the same time Vipassana brings sankharas to the surface, sometimes one can feel worse than before at times, anger, depression. So gradual improvements doesn't always feel perceptible. Sometimes we discover that we have deep tendencies towards defilements we didn't realize were there through our practice. Can you offer some thoughts, encouragement on this?
Well, it doesn't really refer to the Sīla part. It's more to the last sentence of this verse, purifying one's mind. And I don't know if so that the question comes from someone who is a meditator. So maybe we need to explain that during a meditation process, self-observation, one comes across all these, let's call it negative tendencies, negative habits. I think you started with negative habit. And we notice them maybe even for the first time, or if we were aware of them, we had suppressed them. And in the process of meditation, we notice them strongly. And of course, we are upset. That's the good part of it. So we notice that there's a lot of stuff within us which we may have not noticed before, and we're getting upset. And then, of course, the practice of meditation, remote observation with non-reaction, starts kind of, helping to get release these habits. And in the process of ongoing, that's why people come for meditation course and come again and again, because they notice that these habits get reduced and they get minimized. Did I catch the whole question? There was a second part of it, right? or is it okay?
I think that's okay. There's another
Okay.
question that's similar. Maybe you can talk about this one. It says, lacking sympathy for others when full of anger, all beings loathe suffering. This is a quote from your talk, or part of it. Can you talk more about this? Is this perhaps inspiration to try to come out of anger more and more? Do you have any personal story about coming out of anger or wrong speech associated with anger, bit by bit, or can you elaborate on the process?
I think it's again, first of all, you have to notice that you're angry. You know, sometimes you're angry and you don't even notice it, or that's what usually happens. I mean, meditators should not should come out of this situation. But the first thing is, yes, I notice that I'm angry. And usually when you're angry, you think you're right that you're angry because you have a reason for being angry. So I can shout it out, I can react. So, but by continuous practice and by continuous observation, then you will find that the anger that you produce or that you foster because it comes up from within you will be multiplied by reacting according to that anger, and then you have to find your own way how to stop it. I mean, it's everyone has his own ways to do it who tries to, but by realizing that it is there, by taking a break of, and I said something about, you know, being aware, having the awareness that you're training in the course, in the meditation course, getting more awareness of yourself, and then also, you know, observing what is happening. That already is a break. And by the continuation of practice, these habits are should get minimized. And I mean, I can say, yes, it does, or, you know, and especially I have a wonderful wife and we're both meditators. And of course we have this, you know, relationship issue that at times we don't agree with everything, but because we're both meditators, we can find our life has changed enormously in the reaction of, you know, being not happy with the other one. It's, you know, so it's turned into a quite happy and peaceful life, I know, and I think that's how it should go. Yeah, the core thing is the practice, but we didn't talk about this today, so I hope the listeners can realize what I mean.
Okay. As another one, in case of war or occupation, if I donate to the army that defends my country or support army in other ways, does this mean I'm breaking Sīla? Because army actually kills the enemies and it's like I'm supporting this. And the second part of the question, can I wish freedom to my country when this actually means more people will be killed defending it?
Well, I think it's the most delicate question you have asked so far, and it's the most actual practice. And today's world has been having lots of wars all over since the Second World War, but they were not affecting the West. So this question becomes more and more, you know, accurate. I would say the first thing is, you know, he writes or she writes something about supporting the army in other ways. The first thing is, I think when you go, and he's quite right, of course, supporting the army always potentially involves killing. It doesn't mean that this army is going into a war, but it potentially goes into killing. And there is, of course, two sides. Why is this army facing a war? Is it to defend, or is it to aggress? And so again, here I would say, if I can avoid being a soldier, I would try to avoid. I mean, I had the good opportunity as a boy. There was this chance you could do social service or to go to the army. That is one thing. Then the second thing is, I met one meditator. He was in the Ukraine, in the Ukraine war, but on the other side, he was a Russian, and he said, you know, whenever I had to shoot, I shoot in the air. He wasn't caught, right? So he avoided. He maintained his Sīla, but of course he didn't fulfill the duty that he should have been fulfilling. So the volition is different. I think if somebody is an aggressor or somebody defends, so I think also the karmic effects would be different. But of course, I'm not the person to judge. I'm not in this position, fortunately, here in Bavaria, to have to face this situation. So I think, again, unfortunately, I have to say, I cannot really say something. Each one has to say, but potentially, of course, if I support any army, this means I support, it's like I produce a weapon, this weapon is going to be used. If I support an army, this army is going to fulfill its duty. But there's a difference in defending, I think, and in aggressive, in aggressing, a country. So that needs to be considered. There was a second part. Could you repeat, or is it included now?
I think that's included. I think that's fine. Yeah. And that actually brings us to the end of our time. So thank you so much for your time and for giving this beautiful talk and for answering all the questions.
Sorry, it was a long talk. I didn't.
No, it's nice.
It's quite. Yeah, I wanted to. Yeah. Anyway, it was a bit long, I think.
That was nice. People like to hear more about that topic. Something we don't talk about enough. So yeah, it's really helpful.
Thank you so much, Klaus and Marta, for joining us today. On behalf of Pariyatti, I'd like to thank you all for attending this event. As a small, resource-limited nonprofit organization, we rely on volunteers to help us wherever possible, and today's event would not have been possible without the generous support of Tina Sabla and Chandragupta, so thanks again for your help. It's much appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, so goodbye.